They were supposed to be celebrating the happiest days of their lives, a perfect couple on a perfect honeymoon. But beneath the turquoise waves and candlelit dinners, one secret was about to turn paradise into a murder scene. This isn't just a story about love, it's about identity, fear, and a truth too heavy to bear. Lily Matthews was a 30-year-old woman from Chicago. Graceful, intelligent, and quietly charismatic, she had lived a life full of personal struggle. Growing up, she had always felt out of place, facing challenges she knew few could understand. She had fought for years to live as the woman she truly was, battling societal expectations and her own inner turmoil. But despite the difficulties, she had found peace and acceptance in her transition, and she was determined to live a life that was true to herself. Lily's secret carried years of pain and fear. She was a transgender woman. Born male, she had fought for years to live as the woman she knew herself to be. She had endured surgeries, societal rejection, and inner turmoil to be who she was, but her past was something she wasn't ready to share. Despite her deep connection with his new man, she feared the truth might tear them apart. James Halley was a 32-year-old tech entrepreneur who grew up in New York City. Ambitious and driven, he had built a successful career in the fast-paced world of technology, climbing the corporate ladder with precision and hard work. But despite his professional achievements, James had always struggled with personal relationships. Past heartbreaks had left him cautious, wary of giving his heart away too easily. He kept his personal life guarded, preferring to focus on his career rather than risking vulnerability. He had always believed in the idea of love, but he hadn't truly experienced it. Not until he met Lily. Before Lily ever met James, Lily Matthews had already fought some of the most intense battles of her life, many of which were invisible to the world around her. Born as Liam Matthews in a conservative Chicago suburb, her early years were filled with confusion, isolation, and a deep, unshakable sense of misalignment between who she was expected to be and who she truly was inside. From as early as 5 years old, Lily had memories of looking in the mirror and feeling estranged from the reflection that stared back at her. She didn't have the words for it then, but she knew something was profoundly different. Growing up in a strict religious household, there was little room for vulnerability or self-exploration. Her parents, while not unkind, were deeply traditional and expected their child to follow a predictable path: masculinity, sports, discipline, and one day, a wife and kids. School was even more difficult. She learned early to suppress her femininity, to laugh at jokes that hurt her, to mimic a version of masculinity that felt like a costume. But every act of pretending chipped away at her spirit. The dysphoria grew more pronounced in her teenage years, turning into anxiety, depression, and a crippling fear that she would never be able to live as her true self. It wasn't until college, hundreds of miles away from her family, that Lily began to explore her identity openly. The internet had become her only sanctuary during high school, where she found anonymous forums, stories of other trans women, and for the first time, language that helped her understand what she was feeling. In the safe, progressive environment of her university, Lily started hormone replacement therapy, HRT. She sought out support groups, started presenting more femininely, and met people who saw her for who she really was. But the transition was not easy. HRT came with a host of emotional and physical challenges. There were days of intense self-doubt and nights spent crying alone, wondering if she had the strength to keep going. Surgeries followed: facial feminization, breast augmentation, and eventually gender confirmation surgery, vaginoplasty. Each one was a step closer to physical alignment, but they also carried emotional scars, as each procedure reminded her of the life she had left behind and the years lost to fear. Coming out to her family was the hardest part. Her parents reacted with disbelief and distance. Her father stopped calling. Her mother offered only strained silence. Some childhood friends disappeared completely. Lily, though devastated, chose peace over conflict. She built a new family, a chosen one, of people who embraced her identity and encouraged her to live boldly. Despite the loss, Lily began to thrive. She returned to school to finish her master's degree in creative writing and found a modest but fulfilling job at a community arts foundation in Chicago. She was known for her gentle strength, her soft-spoken wisdom, and the warmth she extended to anyone who crossed her path. But even in this period of stability, she was still haunted by the past. Fear lingered in the background, fear of rejection, of being found out, of someone turning on her. When she met James, her instinct was to protect herself. She didn't lie. She just didn't tell everything. She had never met anyone like him. He saw her as beautiful, smart, kind, all the things she had worked so hard to believe about herself. She was terrified that revealing her truth might destroy the connection they had so quickly formed. So she promised herself she would tell him. Just not yet. She needed time. She needed to trust that he would still see her the same way afterward. But time slipped by, and as their bond deepened, the fear grew stronger. She worried the truth would ruin everything, that she would lose the one man who made her feel completely seen. And yet, by not telling him, she knew she was taking a risk of a different kind, a risk that would later have tragic consequences. From the beginning, there was a spark. Not the lust-driven, over-romanticized kind, but something more grounded. It felt like recognition. Like two people stumbling across each other in the middle of chaos and feeling instinctively that they'd been searching for this connection all along. James was soft-spoken but confident, with a quiet charisma and a love for old records and bad coffee. He was nothing like the men Lily had encountered before. No games, no performative masculinity. Just presence. They'd meet for walks along Lake Michigan, sipping cheap lattes and talking about everything. Books, childhood, what scared them, what they hoped for. James spoke about his job in tech, his strained relationship with his father, and his dream of quitting it all to write. Lily, careful and warm, shared stories about her work in the arts, her favorite childhood books, and the time she cried watching The Iron Giant. But beneath the growing intimacy, a quiet fear stirred inside Lily. She hadn't told him. Not yet. Not about her past, her transition, the trauma she carried in her bones. And the longer she waited, the more impossible it felt. Every day that passed without disclosure made it harder. She knew the risks. She wasn't naive. She'd heard the horror stories. She'd lost friends to violence for less. But James made her feel safe. Loved. He looked at her like she was whole. Not as a project, not as a curiosity, just as Lily. For a time, she let herself believe she could have this, that maybe, just maybe, her past didn't have to define her present. She wasn't trying to deceive him. She was trying to protect the most vulnerable part of herself, the part that had been judged, mocked, and abandoned before. They fell in love. It was real. They talked about moving in together. James started leaving a toothbrush at her place. On weekends, they'd cook dinner and play vinyl records late into the night. She began picturing a future with him. Vacations, Sunday mornings, maybe even a wedding. And that terrified her, because the truth hadn't gone away. It had only grown heavier. Every "I love you" made her chest tighten. Every passing day was another layer of guilt. She rehearsed the conversation in her head over and over. She imagined his reaction. Confusion, maybe anger. Maybe he would leave. Maybe worse. But every time she resolved to tell him, something held her back. What if he never touched her again? What if everything he said about loving her wasn't true? Not if he found out, but when? A few months into their relationship, James proposed to Lily during a quiet weekend getaway in Central Park, New York City. It was an intimate moment, just the two of them in the glow of the city lights, and it felt like a culmination of everything they had shared. Lily, overwhelmed with emotion, said yes without hesitation, knowing that this was the man she wanted to spend her life with. Their wedding was a beautiful celebration, held in the heart of New York, surrounded by close friends and family who witnessed the love between them. After the ceremony, they flew to the Bahamas, a tropical paradise, to begin their honeymoon. A fresh start to their new life as husband and wife. On the surface, it was a fairy tale. But beneath the romance was something Lily had kept hidden for years. Something that, even until their wedding, she hadn't told James. Lily wasn't just Lily. She had been someone else. someone entirely different. The honeymoon, meant to be a celebration of their love, began with joy and excitement. As they boarded the plane to their tropical paradise, there was a palpable sense of anticipation in the air. James couldn't wait to spend those early days with his new wife, basking in the sun, exploring the island, and building memories they could cherish forever. But in the back of Lily's mind, fear lingered. She knew the time had come to tell him, and she feared the worst. The tropical sun glistened on the crystal-clear waters as James and Lily strolled hand in hand along the beach, the soft sound of the waves crashing against the shore, setting the perfect soundtrack for their honeymoon. It was the kind of paradise everyone dreams of, a secluded resort where the worries of the world seemed miles away. The newlyweds, blissfully unaware of the storm that was brewing beneath the surface, were wrapped in the euphoria of their love. For James, it felt like a dream come true. He had never been happier, walking beside Lily, the woman who had so completely captured his heart. He could feel the warmth of her hand in his, the way her fingers gently curled around his as they shared laughter, exchanging inside jokes that only newlyweds seemed to have. Her smile, radiant and full of life, made everything feel effortless, like nothing could ever go wrong. Lily, too, felt the magic of the moment. The resort felt like a sanctuary where she could be her true self, no judgments, no secrets. She reveled in the affection James showered her with, the way he looked at her as if she were the most beautiful woman in the world. She loved him deeply, more than words could express, but beneath the warmth of his gaze, there was a flicker of anxiety in her chest, a quiet but persistent fear that nagged at her. How long could she keep her truth hidden? How long could this perfect facade last? That night, after a dinner filled with soft music and candlelight, they shared a quiet walk under the stars. The resort had arranged a private table for them, just off the beach, where they enjoyed seafood and talked about their future. James spoke about the possibility of starting a family, having children as soon as they can, and a future full of laughter and little moments of joy. Lily smiled and nodded, her heart full, but also heavy with the weight of the secret she was still hiding from him. As they returned to their suite, their love felt like it had reached its peak. James kissed her gently on the lips, the kind of kiss that speaks volumes about affection, desire, and shared dreams. He took her hands, looking into her eyes with that same tenderness. "I feel like we're living in a dream," he said softly, brushing a lock of hair from her face. Lily's heart skipped a beat. The affection she had been holding on to now starting to bubble to the surface. She longed to tell him everything, longed to be completely vulnerable and truthful with the man she had married. She wanted to believe that in this moment of happiness, James would understand her. But a cold knot formed in her stomach, and she could feel the walls she had carefully built around herself tightening once again. Could she risk it? Could she risk losing everything they had? They ended the evening in the most romantic way, cuddling in their bed, watching the waves from their balcony. Their laughter and gentle whispers filled the room, creating a feeling of warmth, connection, and unspoken promises. But in the quiet moments, as James drifted off to lay beside her, Lily couldn't shake the fear gnawing at her heart. She had never been this happy, but she had also never been this afraid. How long could she keep up the charade before the truth tore them apart? As the night deepened, the last rays of the tropical sun faded away, leaving only the sound of the waves and the rhythmic pulse of the resort's nightlife in the background. In their suite, the warm light from the bedside lamp cast a soft glow over the room as James dozed peacefully beside Lily. She stared out the window for a long time, her mind racing, her heart in turmoil. She thought about the future they had just begun to build together. The happiness, the love, the promises. But she also thought about the truth she had kept hidden for so long, the truth that James didn't know, a truth that felt like a heavy weight in her chest, a weight she could no longer carry alone. Lily turned over, glancing at James, his serene face lit by the soft light. He looked so content, so unaware of the storm that was brewing inside her. She had wanted to wait, to find the perfect time to tell him, but the perfect time never came. It felt like the right moment, but the fear of rejection held her back. In that stillness, Lily made a decision. She couldn't live with the fear of hiding any longer. She had to tell him. It wasn't just about the secret. It was about the love she had for him, and the fear of losing it because of her past. She took a deep breath and reached for the medical file she had hidden in her bag. She had been avoiding it, but now it felt like the moment to confront the truth. James stirred slightly, sensing her unease. He reached out, gently placing his hand on hers, his thumb brushing over her skin with that familiar tenderness. His soft, "Are you okay?" was the gentle nudge she needed. She knew it was time. Lily's heart raced, and for a moment, everything felt too much to bear. But she knew that in this moment, the truth had to be told. She had to trust him with all of herself, even if it meant everything they had built could shatter in an instant. But what neither of them could have known was that in this quiet, vulnerable moment, the truth, her truth, would unravel everything. This was a honeymoon turned into a deadly nightmare, a tragedy that would echo far beyond the island, a story about love, fear, identity, and the devastating consequences of secrets too heavy to bear. At first, he thought nothing of it, but curiosity gnawed at him. The file contained letters from medical professionals, records of surgeries, vaginoplasty, and before and after photos. The truth hit him like a freight train. His wife had once been a man. His hands trembled as the weight of the discovery sank in. The perfect woman he had married, the woman he had fallen in love with, was not who she had claimed to be. She told him everything. The words came out in fits and starts, halting, clumsy, raw. Lily didn't look at him at first. She couldn't. But when she finally did, she saw that James wasn't moving. He sat there, completely still. His hands rested on his knees, his mouth slightly parted. His eyes were wide but unreadable. Not angry, not devastated, just blank. Like something inside him had disconnected. For a moment, silence stretched so long it felt like a living thing in the room. She tried to say his name. "James," she whispered. "I just wanted you to know. I didn't want to hide." Still, he didn't speak, but his breathing had changed, slower, deeper, like someone trying to stop a dam from breaking. His eyes darted toward the floor, then back to her. He opened his mouth as if to ask something, but said nothing. The muscles in his jaw tightened, then relaxed, then tightened again. Lily reached forward, just an inch, before he flinched. It was small, almost imperceptible, but she saw it. The recoil, like her hand had become fire. That was when the silence cracked. "I need to think," he said, his voice low and distant, like he was speaking from underwater. I didn't think this was you." She tried to speak, but he held up a hand, shaking, barely steady. "Just give me a second, okay? Please." He stood too fast, knocking the edge of the table. His coffee spilled and dripped to the floor, unnoticed. His fingers curled into fists at his side, then flexed open again. Not a threat. Just someone who didn't know what to do with his hands anymore. Then came the trembling. Not rage. Not yet. Just a slow tremble in his shoulders, like the body bracing for something it didn't understand. "I don't know what this is," he said. "I don't know what to do with this." And in that moment, before anything cruel, before any shouting or slamming of doors, he looked at her with a kind of desperate confusion, like a man watching a familiar house slowly sink into the sea, unable to swim. That was the moment she would remember more than anything else. Not the shouting that followed, or the words flung in pain, or the way he left. But that moment. The collapse. The quiet grief of someone who didn't know whether to reach for her or run. Panic swept over James, and in an emotional frenzy, he confronted Lily. The argument that followed was violent. Lily, tearful and pleading, explained her journey, the years of struggle, the transition, the painful secrecy. She spoke of the love she had for him and her hope that someday he would understand. But James wasn't listening. All he could feel was betrayal. His mind raced with anger, humiliation, and confusion. Every memory of their courtship, every touch, every kiss, suddenly felt like a lie. As the argument escalated, so did James' emotions. He began to see red. His thoughts were consumed with rage, and in the heat of the moment, he attacked Lily, held her neck. It happened so quickly that there was no time for her to defend herself. James, overwhelmed with fury, took her life in a brutal outburst, but the horror didn't end there. In a blind panic, he decided to cover up the crime, to erase every trace of what he had done. He dismembered Lily's body, his hands shaking with fear and guilt as he worked. He thought he could escape, get away with it. He thought he could erase the truth. Lily's best friend Halima grew concerned when they hadn't heard from her since her arrival at the resort. She never called back, line switched off. The couple had promised to keep in touch during their honeymoon, but now there was silence. The first red flag came when Halima reached out to the resort where the couple was staying. The staff confirmed they had checked out, but no one seemed to have seen them leave. It wasn't until a few hours later that the police were alerted. The resort security cameras revealed James leaving the property with a large suitcase, but Lily was nowhere in sight. Authorities were notified and a search began. When they arrived at the hotel suite, the scene was horrifying. Bloodstains were splattered across the room, and evidence of dismemberment was immediately apparent. But there was no body. The investigation quickly turned toward James. His erratic behavior and the rushed departure from the island were suspicious. Detectives began scouring the resort's records and speaking to staff members. It was clear that Lily had been the victim of foul play. They discovered the blood trail leading to a nearby dumpster where they found discarded items of clothing. Clothes that had been cut to pieces, stained with blood. For a while, the investigators were stumped. Where was Lily's body? The scene was so carefully cleaned, it almost seemed as if someone had planned this. Was it an impulsive crime, or had James been plotting this for longer? Detectives dug deeper into the couple's background, hoping to find some kind of motive. Friends and family spoke of the couple's loving relationship. The breakthrough came when forensic experts examined the dismembered clothing found at the scene. The clothing had been carefully packed into a suitcase, but a single overlooked fingerprint on the suitcase's zipper provided the breakthrough the authorities needed. It was a partial print, but it was enough. They matched it to James. After the gruesome crime scene was discovered, investigators quickly learned that James had fled the resort. Initially, they suspected he was headed straight for the airport, but further investigation revealed he had checked into a second hotel under a fake name. A vigilant hotel staff member recognized James from security footage circulating and tipped off the authorities. Police then tracked his movements, using surveillance to monitor his departure. Just as James was preparing to leave for the airport, they intercepted him outside the hotel. He was arrested before he could board a flight, his escape plan thwarted. As the investigation progressed, authorities discovered Lily's dismembered body in a series of gruesome findings. Parts of her body, including her torso, arms, and legs, were found discarded in a nearby dumpster, wrapped in plastic and blood-soaked clothing. Her head was never recovered, leaving a chilling mystery about the extent of James's actions. The dismemberment confirmed the brutal nature of the crime and made it clear that James had attempted to cover his tracks completely. As detectives questioned James, it became clear that his emotions were torn between shame and guilt. He admitted to the murder, but he claimed it was a crime of passion, spurred by the shock of learning his wife's truth. He couldn't come to terms with what she had hidden from him, and in his mind, he saw it as a betrayal too great to bear. James's psychological breakdown was evident. His confession was filled with contradictions. He loved Lily, but the discovery had shattered him. It was as though the love he thought he had shared with her was tainted by the deception he believed she had pulled on him. For Lily, the victim, the emotional pain was something only she truly understood. She had kept her secret, not because she wanted to deceive James, but because she feared the rejection she might face. To her, the love she had for him was worth the sacrifice of her own truth. In her final moments, Lily's thoughts were likely filled with regret and heartache. She had loved James, but her truth had destroyed everything. James was charged with first-degree murder. The trial was heavily covered by the media, and the details of the crime shocked the world. James's defense claimed it was a crime of emotional breakdown, but the prosecution argued that it was a premeditated act of violence, fueled by shame and deception. In the end, James was convicted of murder. The court sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The case sparked debates about the complexities of transgender relationships, the dangers of hidden truths, and the devastating consequences of fear and shame. Lily's family and friends, though devastated by her loss, spoke out about the importance of acceptance and love. They urged people to understand that Lily had been a victim of circumstances beyond her control, and that the tragedy could have been avoided if there had been more compassion and open communication. The tragic story of James and Lily Carter serves as a grim reminder of the dangers of keeping secrets in relationships. Love, trust, and acceptance are fragile, and when those elements are shattered by fear and betrayal, the consequences can be catastrophic. The case of Lily's murder is a haunting example of how one moment of rage, fueled by a deep-seated fear of the truth, can lead to irreversible destruction. What drives someone to commit such a horrific act, especially when it stems from a hidden truth? Do you think James's emotions justified his actions, or was it an unforgivable crime of rage? Drop your final thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more gripping true crime stories like this one. Stay tuned, and thanks for watching.